Do this for 10 years, and you might never have to work again. That sentence is simple. It's also dangerous if you treat it like a promise instead of a plan. So let me be blunt. What makes that sentence true for a lot of people isn't a secret investment or a flashy trade. It's the disciplined refusal to do the stupid things that most people do when they're desperate to catch up. If you follow a sober 10-year program built around avoiding catastrophic mistakes, reducing expenses, and sticking to boring investments, the odds shift dramatically. Work can become optional for many people, not guaranteed, but far more likely than most realize. Here's the core problem. After 50, time isn't on your side the way it used to be. You don't have 30 years for a big loss to recover, yet the behavior we see is predictable. People who are close to retirement chase hot tips, leverage up to catch up, or ignore mounting debt. Every single one of those moves can erase decades of discipline in a single afternoon. The smart first move is not to find genius returns. It's to stop making ruinous mistakes. If this is ringing true, grab the 10-year checklist in the description right now. It's a one-page guide that lines up the exact steps I'm about to walk you through. It's simple. Keep it on your fridge. Let me tell you 3 short stories. They're real enough to be painful and common enough to be boring, because that's precisely the point. The dentist. Mark had a tidy practice, good clients, and about $350,000 tucked away by age 56. He was cautious most of his life, but then he started reading forums and realized everyone else seemed to be getting rich off cryptocurrencies and meme stocks. He felt behind. He took $150,000 out of low-risk investments and put it into a handful of speculative bets, highly concentrated leverage positions that promised quick, big returns. Within 6 months, 2 of those bets collapsed. He lost 60% of what he moved into those plays, $90,000 down the drain. And the ripple effect was worse. He had to pull money from the practice for cash flow, deferred maintenance, and family help. By the time he stopped and admitted the mistake, his $350,000 nest egg had become roughly $260,000. The arithmetic is cold. A 25% decline in total savings at 56 doesn't feel like much until you calculate how much extra you need to save every month to get back to where you started. To make up that gap in 10 years at a conservative 6% annual return, he would have needed to save roughly an extra $1,300 a month. For someone with a mortgage, staff, and the occasional large expense, that's not trivial. The retired teacher, Linda, taught for 35 years and had $200,000 in retirement accounts and a modest house paid off. Her nephew called one afternoon raving about the next big thing. He showed her charts, urgent messages, and a plan that sounded too good to ignore. Believing it was a small, reasonable bet to help her grandchildren someday, she moved $50,000 into that opportunity. In a single weekend, the project collapsed. She lost $40,000. That loss represented decades of frugality, 10, 15 years of living beneath her means. She was 68 on a fixed income, and now she had to pull from her Social Security and an annuity to cover living expenses she had planned to fund from that account. When you're older, a large avoidable loss turns retirement from secure to precarious overnight. A 20% hit at age 68 is different from a 20% hit at age 35. Recovery is far harder. The engineer. Paul was an engineer who liked to trade options on the side. He always told himself he knew what he was doing. At 55, he convinced himself a few smart option plays would make up for the years lost to concentrating on his career rather than his portfolio. He borrowed against a second property to fund the trades, and within 2 years, his leveraged bets blew up. He lost roughly $200,000, about a third of his lifetime savings. That debt and lost capital forced him to take a part-time job he had hoped to avoid and sell the rental property at a poor price. The short-term thrill became a long-term handicap. After each of those stories, there's a straightforward arithmetic lesson. It's not glamorous. It's painful and precise. Here's the arithmetic most people refuse to do. Let's take round conservative numbers and keep the assumptions simple. Assumption A, conservative long-term return, 6% annually. That's a reasonable, middle-of-the-road figure for a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds over a decade without assuming miracles. Scenario 1, steady, disciplined saving. Start $300,000 at age 55. Monthly contribution, $1,000. Years, 10. At 6% annual return, that $300,000 grows to about $538,000 in 10 years by itself. The $1,000 monthly contributions compounded at the same rate add roughly $164,000. The total becomes approximately $702,000. That's a meaningful nest egg without heroics. Steady contributions in time. Scenario 2, a catastrophic loss early. Same starting $300,000 at age 55. Immediate 40% loss from one bad bet. Your $300K becomes $180K. If you still contribute $1,000 monthly and earn 6% thereafter, after 10 years, you end up with only about $462,000, down from the $702K you'd have without the loss. To hit the original $702K, you would need to contribute about an extra $500 a month for those 10 years, on top of the $1,000 you were already contributing, because that loss removed both principal and the compounding utility of that principal. A single 40% loss made your monthly savings requirement jump by 150%. The lesson: a late-life large loss requires dramatically higher savings to get back to the same place. The arithmetic is not kind to risk taken late. Now, let's translate behavior into a concrete, repeatable 10-year plan. This isn't rocket science. It's discipline and arithmetic. The title of this conversation, "Do This for 10 Years and You'll Never Have to Work Again," isn't an absolute promise. A more honest phrasing is, do this for 10 years, and you vastly increase the probability that work becomes optional. That's the truth. Here's how to make that vast increase more than a slogan. The 10-year program overview. Year 0, today. Stop the bleeding. That's the first and most important move. If something can ruin you, if a single decision would knock you out of financial viability, don't do it. Apply that filter to temptation, investment pitches, and family pressure. Then move through these core components and repeat them every month for the next 10 years. 1. Immediate stops. The 5 things to stop today. Stop chasing hot tips or time-limited opportunities pushed by people with a vested interest. Stop using leverage in speculative positions. No borrowing to buy volatile assets. Stop piling on high-interest consumer debt. Stop treating credit as an asset. Stop treating one person's anecdote as evidence. Avoid investments you don't understand. Stop letting ego or comparison drive decisions. Don't look like your neighbor. Act like your future self. Those 5 stops are defensive. They protect the assets you already have, and when you're 50 plus, defense beats offense more often than not. 2. Reduce spending now. Small cuts. Compound. Cutting $500 a month sounds small. It's not. Save $500 each month and invest it prudently at 6% annual return. Over 10 years, that equals roughly $82,000. That's a real argument against lifestyle leakage. If you trim $1,000 a month, you're looking at roughly $164,000 in 10 years. Contrast that with the risk of chasing 20% or 50% returns through speculative bets that can wipe out a large share of your capital. The arithmetic favors boring frugality over risky glamour. 3. Eliminate or reduce high-cost debt. Credit card interest at 18% or more is a silent compounding tax. Every dollar paying high interest is a dollar you can't put to work at lower, reliable returns. Prioritize paying down high-interest balances first. If you must carry debt, convert it to the lowest possible fixed cost and attack the expensive part first. Compound interest works both ways. Use it to your advantage on the asset side by minimizing its harm on the debt side. 4. Build an emergency fund sized for you. For people at or near retirement, an emergency fund is not a vague 3 to 6 months. It should be sized to realistic exposures, medical deductibles, potential home repairs, and short-term income shocks. For many, that means 6 to 12 months of essential expenses in a liquid account. If you're self-employed or have higher health care exposure, favor the larger end of that range. Liquidity prevents forced selling after market losses. 5. Invest reliably and boringly. If you must name an approach, low-cost, broadly diversified index funds or similarly diversified, low-fee vehicles are the backbone. Set automatic contributions and let compounding do the heavy lifting. Don't time the market. Rebalance annually or when your allocation drifts materially. Be clear, boring here is a feature, not a bug. You're buying stability and predictability in exchange for spectacular headlines. 6. Use the "if it can ruin you, don't do it" decision filter. This isn't a one-time slogan. It's a discipline you run every time you face a choice. If the downside of an action can destroy your financial independence, if losing this money means you'll be forced to work or sell assets at a bad time, don't take it. That filter should apply to business guarantees, family investment pitches, second mortgages, and late-stage get-rich-quick schemes. Now, for deeper arithmetic, so the plan becomes vivid rather than abstract. Numbers remove illusion. Example, the power of consistency versus one bad loss. Person A, $400,000 starting, $1,000 a month contributions, 6% return for 10 years. Future value, $636,000. Person B, same start and contributions, but at year 1 suffers a 40% loss on the entire portfolio before continuing to invest at 6%. After 10 years, future value, $417,000. The difference, roughly $219,000. To close that gap, person B needs to add about $1,140 more per month for 10 years. That's the cost of one catastrophic mistake in household terms. Another demonstration what a single reduction in spending can buy. Cut $300 a month. At 6% over 10 years, that's roughly $49,000. Cut $500 a month, roughly $82,000. Cut $1,000 a month, roughly $164,000. So before you pivot into a risky idea that promises big returns, ask whether a modest spending cut could buy the same capital you'd be chasing without the downside risk. Let's talk about debt in plain terms. Compound damage. If you carry $20,000 on a credit card at 18% interest and only pay the minimum, you'll pay tens of thousands in interest and take years to clear it, draining capital you could have invested at even 5–6%. Treat high-rate debt like a guaranteed tax on your future. Pay it down first. Prioritizing debt reduction is often the highest risk-adjusted investment you can make. Behavioral traps, the real enemies. Numbers matter, but behavior decides whether you get the numbers. Most late-stage financial disasters have behavioral roots: FOMO, ego, comparison, and wishful thinking. You read an article where someone doubled their money in a year. You remember the headline, "Forget the denominator," how many lost money on the same trade, and act. You borrow to buy dignity or to keep up appearances. You rationalize that this time it's different. That phrase, more than any statistic, signals danger. Here are 3 practical ways to shut those traps down. Create friction for decisions. Require a 48-hour waiting period for any investment outside your core plan. That cools emotion. Use a third-party check. Before making a major move, run it by a trusted, dispassionate advisor or a friend who won't cheerlead. Put rules in writing. A personal investment policy statement can codify your asset allocation, rebalancing policy, and the "if it can ruin you, don't do it" filter. The stop doing list and the do consistently list, side by side. Stop doing. 1. Stop chasing high-risk, high-promised return schemes pushed by social proof. 2. Stop using leverage and speculative plays. No borrowing to gamble. 3. Stop ignoring high-interest debt. 4. Stop treating one-time wins as sustainable strategies. 5. Stop letting pride or comparison dictate spending. Do consistently. 1. Automate monthly contributions into diversified low-cost funds. 2. Reduce discretionary spending incrementally and invest the difference. 3. Maintain a liquid emergency fund sized to your risks. 4. Pay down high-cost debt aggressively. 5. Rebalance annually and review your plan once a year, not monthly. Now let's walk through a few realistic, conservative scenarios that show how 10 years of discipline can change outcomes. Scenario A, the modest starter. Starting assets, $150,000 at age 55. Contributions, out of $500 per month. Return assumption, 6% annual. Result, after 10 years, the contributions themselves will build to approximately $246,000, and the initial $150K will grow to about $268,000. Total near $514,000. That's a meaningful $500,000 cushion in 10 years for modest but consistent contributions in time. Scenario B, the late catch-up. Starting assets, $75,000 at age 55. Contributions, $2,000 per month. Return, 6% annual. After 10 years, contributions grow to roughly $328,000. The initial $75K grows to about $134,000. Total, roughly $462,000. Again, this is conservative, reliable progress, no speculation required. Notice a pattern. Regular contributions and compounding create substantial change, but equally, notice how a single large loss can wipe out a meaningful portion of that work. Let's quantify that. The cost of one big loss at age 55. Suppose you have $500,000 at 55 and are on track to add $1,000 a month. You're planning for a 10-year accumulation. If you suffer a 40% loss early, your balance drops to $300,000. Even if you keep contributing, your 10-year result will be hundreds of thousands less than the path without the loss. To recover fully, you'll need to drastically increase savings or accept a smaller retirement cushion. That's why don't let it ruin you. matters more than chasing extra returns. Common questions and their math-based answers. Q. But what if I can get 20% returns on a new startup or crypto coin? A. Rarely sustainable and usually correlated with higher risk. The right question: what's the worst-case scenario and can you survive it? If a 50% chance of losing a large share of capital exists and you're close to retirement, the prudent move is to avoid it. Even if you doubled your investment half the time, the downside is catastrophic. Q. Can I use home equity or a second mortgage to boost returns? A. Leverage amplifies outcomes, including losses. If housing markets drop or interest rates rise, you can be forced into selling at the worst time. For someone nearing retirement, the safety of owning a primary residence outright or with low mortgage risk is often worth more than the speculative upside of leveraged plays. Q. What about annuities or concentrated pensions? A. Every tool has trade-offs. Fixed annuities can offer guaranteed income, valuable for longevity risk, but often at the cost of liquidity and fees. Pensions are excellent, but rare. The point isn't to shun tools, it's to evaluate them against the "can it ruin me" filter. If a decision reduces your ruin risk and helps secure cash flow, it's a candidate for consideration. Practical monthly checklist for the next 10 years. Month 1. Stop. Secure your emergency fund to 6 or 12 months. Identify any high-interest debt and set a payoff plan. Month 2. Automate the contribution amount you can commit. Put it on autopilot before you can talk yourself out of it. Month 3. Prune recurring subscriptions and discretionary expenses to free up an extra $300 to $1,000 per month. Funnel savings to investments or debt reduction. Month 4. Rebalance your portfolio to your target allocation and set an annual calendar reminder to repeat. Month 6. Review insurance, health, long-term care, homeowner, to ensure you're not exposed to catastrophic risk. Month 12. And each year thereafter, review your net worth, adjust contributions upward if circumstances allow, and renew the "if it can ruin you" test for any new opportunities. A realistic look at retirement becoming optional. Let's be explicit about what work optional means. It doesn't mean you won't ever do anything you enjoy. It means you're no longer forced to work to meet basic expenses. For many, reaching that state requires a combination of capital, conservative withdrawal rates, and some income-later options. A common safe withdrawal heuristic is 3 to 4% annually of your total portfolio in retirement income. Using that, $500,000 at a 4% withdrawal rate yields about $20,000 per year. $1,000 at 4% yields $40,000 per year. If your goal is to have work optional, generate the difference between guaranteed income, Social Security, pensions, and your target spending, these numbers matter. 10 years of disciplined saving can move you from dependence to optionality, especially if you also apply spending discipline and debt reduction. A cautionary note about guarantees and quick fixes. I'll repeat, do not let anyone sell you a guarantee. Nobody can promise you will never need to work again. What we can do is change probabilities by defending your capital, cutting avoidable spending, automating contributions, and refusing high-risk gambles that can wipe you out. You move the odds decisively in your favor. That's the honest path. Final micro hooks. Questions to keep you sharp. Does this opportunity have an irrecoverable downside for me? If I lose this money, how many extra dollars per month would I have to save to get back on track? Am I trying to look rich or to be secure? Would a 48-hour cooling-off period stop me from making a harmful decision? Climax. The choice you face today, you can chase headlines, put faith in last-minute miracles, and play a game of financial roulette, or you can do boring things persistently and let math work for you. Here's the truth. Discipline compounds. Avoidance of stupidity compounds just as surely as investments do. If you stop making catastrophic mistakes, cut unnecessary spending, eliminate expensive debt, keep an adequate emergency fund, and invest consistently in diversified low-cost vehicles, your chance of reaching work-optional status in 10 years improves substantially. That decision filter, if it can ruin you, don't do it, is the single most powerful rule I can give you. It's simple to apply and hard to obey when emotions run high. Make it your default. One final practical nudge. Download the 10-year checklist in the description. It's the one-page companion to this message. The monthly steps, the stop list, the do list, and a simple calculator that lets you plug in your numbers and see the difference 10 years of discipline can make. Follow these steps not because they sound clever, but because they are effective. Resist the temptation to trade your future for a story that flatters your pride. Guard your capital. Make modest reductions in spending you don't miss. Automate your saving. Keep your investment simple and diversified. Say no when a deal can destroy years of work. If you do this, no magic, just steady, stubborn discipline, you will dramatically increase the probability that work becomes optional. That is a realistic, powerful outcome. It's not flashy, it's not sexy, but it's what wins. If this message landed with you, subscribe and grab the toolkit in the pinned description. The toolkit includes the 10-year checklist, a simple savings calculator, and a one-page decision filter card you can print and carry with you when someone offers the next big thing. Make the next 10 years count. Don't let a single bad choice undo decades of sensible behavior. Protect your capital, make disciplined choices, and let compound results work quietly in the background. That's the path that makes work optional for many people. Not because they found a secret, but because they stopped doing the things that destroy the plan.